In this hospital, we were all very excited because there had been landings, Allied landings in the south, in Sicily and so forth. And there were all sorts of rumors about landings in the north of Italy, and we'd better stop still. But one day, suddenly all the Italian soldiers, the guards, people just threw their guns away and disappeared. And they were immediately followed by a whole host of Germans, soldiers. And we were rounded up and counted out on the parade ground in the middle of this prisoner of war camp, which was a circle of huts and a parade ground in the middle. And, well, we were divided up and told to be ready by next morning, only with what we could carry. Well, the chap next to me, the South African engineer he was, and I got together and we said, look, are we going or not? And we said, no, we're not going. So when the troops, the German escort arrived next morning and called us out, my friend and I, we went along to the store place, which had a ramp leading up to it, for trolleys to go up. And we went under the ramp and we stayed there. And evening came on and we got bitten to hell by mosquitoes and things. And we said, look, we can't stay here. And the rest of our fellow prisoners had been taken off, you see, into trucks. But the Germans remained behind. They knew there'd be people behind. But we couldn't stay under the ramp forever. So we moved out from under there and into the store. Said, well, we may as well have some food now. So we started to tuck in, and then we heard some Germans outside. So he went behind the door. No, I went behind the door, and he went, behind some crates. These big crates of stores, sent by the Red Cross. And a couple of Germans came in. They saw our meal we'd been eating, you see, and they finished that off. And they got up and went off again. They didn't bother to explore the store. They had been told to just look at it, see if there was any sign of anybody, and we had been careful. And then we came out of our hiding places and crept around the inside of in the shadows to a hut and went in. And we met some of the people who'd been staying behind. And they had all the usual hiding places to themselves. They went up into the lavatory tanks above the lavatories and elsewhere. So we went under the beds, but not under the beds, but between the mattress and the bottom, because it was a habit, we thought. If you're going to go through and look at the beds, you're going to prod it with a bayonet. And I could feel when they came through, they said, come out, but nobody obeyed them, of course. But there are some of us had gone into under the blankets, and they caught them. I could hear them yell out when they prodded with the bayonet. But they prodded us, but it didn't get through the mattress onto us, you see. So that, in a way, we could laugh after it, but while they were prodding around, we decided, no, this is too much. But we decided we'd stay there until the Germans had gone. Well, they took 2 or 3 of us and took them away and sent them after the others, But then there was the second night we had to spend, and we couldn't spend all that time under the mattress, But we went there, we did that, and took another prodding, but they didn't find us. And on the 3rd day, we said, look, we've either got to make it or hand over. We can't just go on living under the mattress the whole time. So one afternoon, while everybody was asleep, more or less, siesta, we went out the back door, climbed over the fence, over the barbed wire of the wall, and down, and then suddenly a chap from one of the watchtowers shouted, and he started shooting a machine gun at us, 2 of us. Well, we rushed off through a cornfield, high stalks, just down like that. And they were shooting into the cornfield, but nowhere near us, anyhow. We got through to the other side and walked on through the countryside, through sunken paths, until we reached a farm where we discovered others, had taken refuge, and they said, no, there's no more room here, you better go on to this other one. So we went to the other place. Now, the Italian farmers weren't reluctant because we always promised them to leave a note that they had helped us, so that when the rumor was they landed up in the north somewhere, and they'd be coming through any moment, and they would just show them this note and they'd get rewarded. But we stayed on in this farmhouse for a couple of days, couple of nights we were there, and then they said, no, you must move on, If they discover us, you here, and we've given you shelter, we'll get the hell bounced out of us, So they gave us a couple of bicycles, old bicycles, and gave us clothes to wear, So we took the bicycles down to the main road and decided to make for San Marino, along that main road that goes from Bergamo to San Marino. So that's what we did. We took our bicycles to the foot of the mountain of San Marino and then walked up and discovered partly to our amazement that it had been occupied by German troops. Well, they weren't armored, they were spending the time roustering around the place, and we went into a cafe, and there were all Germans there, having their beer and, the tables. But the landlady or the cook saw us, recognized us right away, and came and said, come with me. So we went behind to the kitchen, and she said, I know where to put you. She said, you can't stay here. These are Germans, and they'll take you and they'll hit us, if we take you in. So wait here till this evening, and I'll take you down to some friends of ours, and you can sleep there for a night or two, and then you can do what you want. So we stayed up in San Marino for a night, and then that night we went down again from the top, down to the bottom, and along the riverside there to a farmhouse. And they said, yes, we can take you for a couple of nights, but no more. So we slept there. We needed some sleep, after all this. And decided that we would take, as far as the bikes would take us, through the mountains, down the center of the mountains, down to, because it was obvious to us by then that the Germans had taken over most of north of Italy, and there were no Allied troops going to land anywhere near there. So, after a couple of days, we moved out on these bicycles that we had, but they wrecked. The wheels collapsed, and the thingy-hops, the chain that goes round, that broke. So we said, leave it. And we just put them on the side of the road and walked on and up until we reached, what they call the Mullah Terrace. That is, there's pathways in the mountains for the mule trains. There was no other way of getting up there except by mule. And so we took those because they were relatively safe. And we made our way south, going from farmhouse to farmhouse. We had to cross valleys where the Germans were, and they were dangerous. And once, when we were down in the valley, a German convoy came around, just caught us there. But we knew enough Italian to say, "Avanti!" And off they went, and left us alone. So we went up the mountain again, And in Avezzano, we slept with the shepherds down in the valley, in their little things, and they feasted us. They were very proud to have met us and feasted us. And we went on and on, going from farmhouse to farmhouse, from place to place, until we arrived to somewhere which we thought was a farmhouse near Naples. It was just above Naples, really, in the mountains there. And the nearest town was LaGuardia. And they said, well, we'll keep you here because we wanted to know what the situation was. Where were the Allies? Should we go on or should we stop, or what should we do? What was happening? And they said, well, we'll get some friends of ours to come and take you, see if they'll take you to their radio, because they got a radio and we can find out where the Germans are, So they came one evening, these friends of these farmers came up, and they had some, what they call disguises. We have disguises for you. And we said, what? Don't we look right? They said, And you know what those disguises were? I mean, all these years ago, they were giving these disguises. You put the cloak on and a big sombrero, like the advertisements in some of these ports, Oporto wine. There's this man standing up with a black gown at his ankles and a broad-brimmed sombrero, I said, disguise? They said, yes, these are disguises. Well, it wasn't till, they noticed us right away. And I said, yes, we will. Yes. So come with us now. So we went. Now, they surrounded us. And we walked through the village to their house, to listen to the radio. You could see all these people looking up and saying, two strangers in disguise. Now, we don't know who they are because we can't see them. We can't recognize them. And so it's very clever, quite beyond our English intelligence, to see these ins and outs. And in latter days when all these Mohammedans are coming to the West, and they have these burqas, these women. And later on in life, I was a professor in Iraq, and they said, these are the perfect disguise if you want a woman, because you go into the harem of these rich men, and they think it's a woman visiting the harem, but it's the girl you want in the harem. So, perfect disguise if you want a woman, you go and put on the burqa. And later on in life, we were told, that when the revolution occurred, the Great Revolution, when the king was executed, or not executed, or assassinated, and the chief man, the dictator at the time, the man in power, whom we always heard about him from his masseurs, who was German, of German descent. She used to tell us all about him, his sleeping habits. He always kept a burqa and a revolver under his pillow. And we were told that in the end, he was killed, He was killed on the streets because he had forgotten about the footwear. And the policeman saw this supposed woman with her burqa wearing boots, which he would never do. And he said, hey, let me see what you are, and shot him on the spot, That was Nuri Said. He was killed by a policeman on the street. At least we were told that. But anyway, where was I? This is long afterwards, but these disguises, yes. Well, we got to the shop, we got to the house, and tried the radio, but we got no news. But they said, look, the Germans are down in the valley down here, and in this other place, we think they're about to leave La Guardia. I said, all right, let's go. So the next day, from the farmhouse, we said, thank you very much, here's the note, and we went south. Don't know where. We came across what were obviously German positions, advanced positions for the artillery, because, when we would dodge them, we could see them because we were looking for them, We went around them and around. And finally, we arrived at a sunken road, and we heard troops marching. So we hid. And we saw the tops of the helmets. Now, the top of an American helmet and a German helmet are very much alike. You know, we said Germans. Then we heard somebody say in English, and heard an English word of command going up. So he said, no, they're Americans. But anyhow, we waited till they passed and went down into the road and followed the road down into this village, and we saw the Stars and Stripes. So we went down into the house and were met by some people, and we said, we're escaped prisoners of war. Oh, they said, we see the intelligence officer. So we was being questioned, you see, and he said, what is your name, please? And I said, Burridge, Ken Burridge. He said, Burridge? I said, yes, Ken Burridge. He said, is your father a doctor? I said, yes. He said, we are Maltese, we too, intelligence people, and we were, my father knew your father because he used to tell us about your father and what he was up to in Egypt and these prisoner of war camps that he had to go to. He was told to look over. And they said, and you're a Burridge, you must be his son? I said, yes, I am. That's the doctor who was my father. He said, oh, well, he said, I can't do anything. He said, all I can do is take your name and say hello and goodbye. So we got into the hands of bureaucracy, and they put us down to sleep in the cellar down there, you know. And I remember waking up and saying, you know, all stiff, and because there were no mattresses or anything, we were just on the stones. And I got up, I said, Rowley, that was the name of my friend. I said, I think we were better off out there, don't you? He said, yes, we were, but we looked to the future. He said, in a few days I will be at home, and I don't know where you'll be, but I know I'm going straight home. And so we went to a camp. We were sent eventually to a camp in Naples, and it was a prison, really, I think. But anyhow, it was a sort of place where people on transit were exchanged, and they got transit for them. And I was sent back to Algiers, and he was sent back to South Africa. Well, I went into the depot ship and said to the captain, I'm Burridge, sir. I was in Splendid. Ah, he said, I've just had a letter from your father who says, by the time you receive this, I think my son will have probably escaped and seen you. He said, here's the letter. I said, oh my goodness. You know, another great coincidence, you know. But that was another life. But we enjoyed the walk through the Apennines. It was a great walk. And it was a holiday, and I called it my Italian holiday. From the time we were sunk to the time I got back. Then, you see, when we got to Britain, we had all these disappointments. At least I had all these disappointments. Rowley didn't have any disappointments. He went straight to his family. I reported back to the Admiralty, and I asked for my pay, if I could have any back pay. They said, go and ask Mussolini. I mean, below there. That was, I was rather surprised at that. But then I went to the Admiral submarines and reported there. They said, "Oh, well, come back tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, dear me," you know. And I came back on the morrow, and I waited and waited and waited, and they got up to go, and I said, "Look, I've got things to do." And the WREN, you know, WRNS, the women of the Royal Navy, was there and stopped me at the door and said, "Mr. Burridge, please," said, "he's very busy, the Admiral is very busy." This was in London. "But he'll see you now." So we went to, I saw him, and he was a jolly man. I forget his name. I didn't think it was worth remembering, frankly. And that was that. I had a leave, and they sent me to the special boat section of the army, which is full boats and, you know, these kayaks, which we in submarines used to land off enemy shores, and the boat, see the people off into the full boats, and they'd go and land, and they were spies, right? And so I spent 10 days there, north of Portsmouth, in their headquarters, at the inn. That was a lot of fun, actually, because we went boating in these kayaks, you know, and got lost in the Solent and got back home quite easily, and had our beers. Yes, some good memories on that. But then I was sent, I said, well, they said, "What would you like to do?" And I said, "I'd like to see my dad." So I was sent to a Far Eastern squadron of submarines. But on the way, I went to see my dad in Lucknow. That was fun, too. He said, "Oh, here you are, you know." So we spent a week together, having our evening whiskey together. I said, "Well, I'll never have this." And then, you know, time comes to an end, everything comes to an end, and I was sent to Bombay, and then on to Trincomalee, where the submarine base was at that time. Now, Trincomalee is on the coast from a place called Laval in the hills. And I remembered it very well because when I was in the Royal Sovereign, we stopped at Trincomalee, and we were sent up as cadets to Laval for a rest cure, you know. We went up there, it was a rest camp. And a Chinese traveler merchant came up to see us one day, and he showed me a dressing gown, and he said, gave me the price, you know, and I said, "Well, double or quits," you know. And I spun a coin, and it came down to quits, you see. And he was very disappointed, but he said, no, we spun it and you lost. So he gave him the dressing gown. He said, "No, I won't take any money. I'll give you, not the dressing, yes, dressing gown. I've still got it. It's sort of aging away, but I've still got it." Back in the depot ship, I just was an ordinary officer, you know. And I was in a submarine as an extra officer. And we went up into the Andaman Islands and that area, trying to find something to torpedo or sink in some way and back again. I enjoyed, in a way I enjoyed it, but in many ways I sort of felt, well, how long is this going on for, you know? And then we went up into Subic Bay, you know, as the war started to close. And we had one more adventure. All I know of it was that we took this submarine up into Borneo, where they had an advanced thing, and we took a midget submarine up. We towed it up off Singapore, and these people got into their midget submarine and went into Singapore Harbour, and they sank 2 ships, I think. And then they came out, and we picked them up and took them back to Borneo, and that was the last we saw of them. I mean, we just sort of hung around Borneo, and then peace came. The bomb had been dropped. We were all very excited about the bombs. Atomatic, we called them at that time. Atom bombs, yeah. And well, then the peace came, and I decided I'd leave the Navy. And the captain said, no, don't leave. He said, if you send me a letter, I'll have to, they won't agree to it, and you'll have a black mark against your name for the rest of your life, you know, if you said you want to leave. I said, I want to go, and I'd been reading books, you see. I said, I think I want to do anthropology. I want to be an anthropologist and go and see all these different peoples. Because I'd learned about different peoples in that, and how these peasants lived. And that was a big thing to me. I mean, that experience of seeing how these people lived, that's the first time I came across pizza. You know, they gave us pizzas in this house. They said, this is peasant food, pizza. And I discovered that the Americans knew all about it. Not then, but I think they took it from their Italian experience, or at least from Italian migrants, perhaps. I don't know. But anyway, that's what we learned about pizza, was on the way down. And yes, they fed us well. You know, it was an enjoyable time. Yes, it was a time of great anxiety as well, I must admit that, because we were always on the lookout for German soldiers. But as I say, that time when they crossed us, we said, avanti. And that's, you know, they took that. Yeah.
So anthropology, you had an idea to...
So anyway, I resigned my commission, and I went to Oxford, which I knew quite well, and went to Exeter College and said to the rector, I want to, I'll be leaving the Navy, can I come here? He said, yes, what do you want to study? I said, anthropology. He said, we don't do anthropology as a undergraduate degree. You have to get an undergraduate degree first. So I thought it over, and I should have done geography, you know, but I thought that law somehow, I don't know why I chose law, but I did. And so I got my degree in law, of all things. And then I went to, by that time I had met the anthropology professor. He said, you get a good degree and I'll take you in and you get a diploma in anthropology and maybe write a thesis afterwards, or we get to know what you have to do. So I got my law degree. That was fun, because we were all nearly all ex-service, you know. And I went to do anthropology, and I'd read a lot of the older books, you know, and I found that they were all passé, you know. Don't do that anymore. So I learned all these new things about anthropology. But by this time I'd got a brain working, you know, so I did get my degree in law, and then I got my diploma in anthropology, and then I did a further degree. I wrote a thesis, a B.Lit thesis in anthropology, and that was all right. And then one day the chief of the anthropologists, Evans-Pritchard, said, I got a person here, a professor coming through here, and I want you to meet him because he is going to Australia, and he's a new professor. He's starting a department in the Australian National University, and perhaps if you see him, he might take you on, and you go to Australia when you finish your B.Lit. So I said, thank you, sir. You know, I saw Professor Nardell passed away some time ago, and he said, you know, we got on. He was a bit of a bully, but then I know about bullying because I was bullied a lot they tried to bully me in dragon school, but it failed, you know. I didn't understand. The trouble was that I took him at his word, you know, and said, no, I don't want to do this or whatever, you know. And he didn't challenge me. So anyhow, I didn't allow Nardell to bully me. But he said, right-ho, Burridge. He said, I'll take you on. And he'd never been to Australia, for goodness sake. He was an Africanist, you know, like all of the British and other anthropologists centred in London and in London School of Economics. It's all Africa. And I was the only man out of line, because although we had Srinivas, an Indian professor, you see, from India, there was nothing to do with Melanesia at all. So I went anyhow to Australia as this man's student, Nardell's student. And I was the first student to be recruited. They'd given honorary degrees here and there, but I was the first to start a degree and finish the doctorate under Nardell. And meanwhile, of course, I'd got married and had a son. And well, I think I better end now for the moment, yes. Then go on to my academic career.
Yes. Maybe you can tell us a word about how you remember Evans-Pritchard.
Evans-Pritchard?
Yes.
Oh, jolly man. Yeah, he's a great fellow. I can't think of anybody who would be critical of him except, of course, they might be critical of his anthropology, but not personally, not of him personally. I mean, you could not get on with Evans-Pritchard. He was a nice guy, and I was very proud to meet him. And he liked me, so I liked him. So we got on very well together, and he and what's his name? Never mind. Who went to Cambridge and became professor there, and Srinivas, who became professor in India. That's who my teachers were. And I was very proud. And Gluckman became professor of anthropology at Manchester. They were all professors at the, in the School of Anthropology in Oxford, who went and became professors of anthropology, started departments in other universities. So I was very lucky in many ways. Very lucky indeed. And I enjoyed those 4 years I spent at Oxford. And the family was at Oxford. And so, I was at home in Oxford. I'd been to prep school there, my public school, Blundell's. Yes, that was fun too, because it was in Devon.